Right, stop. I haven't had time to sit at the background, but I've only just become aware of these adverts, and I just have to get this down because, wow. Today we're looking at a new advert for a Honda Civic. Now perhaps you're able to sense the slight frisson of excitement and bemusement in my voice here. It has been the case for many years that different regions around the world have approached advertising for the same product in a completely different way to the way that it's advertised in the UK or America, for example. The internet now exists and people are able to share ideas and memes, and things just spread around a lot more than they historically would have done, where before you would have more insular environments in those different areas. You perhaps don't have that in quite the same way anymore. That said, there's definitely still cultural differences and still things that people are going to chime with. So for example, if you did an advert and it featured a character from EastEnders, that advert for the same product probably wouldn't play so well in Japan because they won't be aware of the character, they won't be aware of the actor. So it just means that in that situation, you have to cater to what the audience is going to be aware of. So what have we got here? It's an advert for a Honda Civic, which on the face of it is a fairly vanilla kind of affair. It's just a car advert. We've seen them before. We know what they do. No worries. This is Japan specific. And as a result of that, they are theming the whole car, the whole line, the whole product line is themed after Evangelion. I'm going to go through a really brief introduction for anyone who doesn't know, because otherwise you won't get the context of what we're talking about. So there are spoilers. If you don't want the spoilers, tune out now. Broadly speaking, it's a coming-of-age, teenage kind of focused show, but with what seem to be mechs and apocalyptic dramas that happen in the background. When you dig down deep into it, there are themes on the meaning of life, God, religion, all of these things come into play, and it goes to some incredibly dark places. Now, it seems just like a mech show off the bat, but there's craziness going on. The mechs aren't mechs, they're kind of flesh and blood. Spoilers again. The reason the teenagers pilot it is because their mothers were kind of absorbed into these things. In any event, they generate these AT fields, and in these adverts, you actually see the Honda Civic blasting through this weird sort of landscape and then smacking into an AT field and bursting through it. It's like craziness. It's like someone had an Evangelion wet dream for what their car advert was going to be, and this was the result. Now, apart from all of this, I don't see particularly what the relationship between the car and the TV series is, apart from they're just saying that it is related. Evangelion was an incredibly influential animated television series, and I don't think we should underestimate how much influence it's actually had. And on top of that, it's no secret that if there's merchandise of it, Evangelion fans will definitely buy it. Seems to be about the only relationship to each of the cars is the colour scheme that goes with it, perhaps. But that's crazy. You're talking about not just you're not talking about a mug anymore with the cool Nerve logo on. You're not talking about plushies or character books or any of the stuff that you might associate with merchandise for a television show. And this show has been heavily merchandised over the years. They have created just about everything you could imagine to merchandise this show. So it has been an incredibly lucrative show in that respect as well. But now we're talking about a car. And it's not a small investment. That's something huge. And we're years after the show's prime time. Admittedly, they are releasing films related to it, and there's one coming out very, very soon as well. So I can see why they chime this to hit now, but still, that's an enormous investment. You're kind of taking the whole nostalgia thing in kicking it into overdrive. You're thinking these people who grew up with this television show are now in a position where perhaps they're about my age, perhaps they're a little bit older than me, and they are able to spend that kind of money on a car, and because they love it, because of the nostalgia, because of the drive to own everything that is associated with the show, they're going to buy it. I would be surprised if this flops, because it's such a well-loved series and it has such a cult following. But I found this fascinating. Compared to a lot of the car adverts which we've looked at recently, it's a completely different type of thing. And I think that they started this advertising campaign before COVID had thoroughly kicked off, so maybe they wouldn't have done it in the same way now. But still, it's a completely different style of advertising. It is entirely relying on other intellectual property to sell this car. And it's amazing to look at something which you just know is completely region specific. And perhaps this is just a great example of if you can find the niche that loves this thing so much that they're willing to go out and buy it no matter what. And I don't think that they're going to be launching this in the UK or the US. I mean, look at the adverts. No one would get what they were looking at. They wouldn't understand what it was meant to mean. And on top of all of that, I think that some of the ideas within the show are really, really dark. It goes to some incredibly worrying, disturbing places, to the point that the creator of the show actually got death threats for the last 2 episodes because it didn't end in the traditional happy way, and people didn't really understand it, and it was crazy and a little bit depressing and a little bit weird and surreal. So now, here you go. You can have that in a car.